and welcome back to On the Grid Podcast, Series 3. And we are here for the Hungarian Grand Prix review, predictions, all of that, because we have a double header. It is once again race week, and we are back in Spa this weekend before the summer break, which is a little bit of a strange feeling for those of us F1 fans who have been watching the sport for a while now, to have Spa as the race before the summer break rather than after. But as ever, I am joined by Adrian Kita. How are you today?
I'm good. I feel ready to go for the final week before the summer break, and then enjoy a nice 2-week holiday before we get back into action once again. So feel ready to go for one more time, and then begin the summer, begin the month off. Let's go.
Yeah, that is true. So we got a nice few weeks off. However, we will still be bringing to you your weekly podcast. But anyway, let's jump straight in and let's go through qualifying to begin with. So out in Q1, Logan Sargent in 20th, Magnussen, George Russell getting out in Q1, Yuki Tsunoda and Alex Albon. Now, obviously, the big talking point is George Russell. What do you make of Mercedes' qualifying strategy in Q1? Because it could have easily been a double exit with how they sent their cars out right at the end. Didn't really give them a lot of time. And then if you lock the brakes up into turn one, which is so easy to do on such cold tyres, they could have had a double Q1 exit.
Let's also not forget that at Hungary they tried the new qualifying system of hards for Q1, mediums for Q2, and softs for Q3. So I think that kind of played a factor into things. And I don't think Mercedes were kind of prepared to see George knocked out in Q1. George even went on to say that the car felt very racy. They just put him out in a crap ton of traffic, and there he goes. He's out in Q1. So it's a disappointment in qualifying, but I think, as we'll talk about later on, he definitely made it up in the race. So it's one of them where you just have to bite the bullet, and he bit the bullet, got knocked out in Q1, and was kind of the talking point of Saturday, where Mr. Saturday faltered once again.
Yeah, qualifying form hasn't been terrific this season, George Russell. But someone who was on form in Q1, Guan Yu Zhou, top timing sheets in Q1, and was a sign of things to come. Also, another notable mention was a double Williams exit in Q1. Now, we know that in recent races, the Williams have been better, but it does still show there are limitations with that car, particularly when on a track which is more downforce dependent, doesn't it? That there's not a long straight which can essentially see them through.
Yeah, and I think for the Williams team, especially the Hungaroring, it's not that track is not really the one for their car. Like you mentioned, they're kind of relying on a long back straight or a long start finish straight to kind of propel them through to Q2 or Q3. And Hungaroring just isn't. It's a lot of twisty turny sections. And yeah, unfortunately, when downforce matters, they just don't have a car underneath them. So to see Logan Sargent in 20th and Alex Albon in 16th, especially Albon in 16th, you're kind of expecting him to get through to Q2 on some occasions. Yeah, it was kind of shocking. But yet again, are we really surprised with their car kind of heavily relying on their absolute power down the start finish straight / back straight? I don't think you're really surprised here. So yeah, Q1 elimination was probably on the cards anyway.
Yeah, if I seem to remember correctly, I think someone may have predicted that last time out. Moving on to Q2 then. So out in the second stage of qualifying, you had Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, Daniel Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon, and Carlos Sainz. Now, Daniel Ricciardo, first race back in Formula One. He's had, 8 months out, and he sticks it in P13, beats his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda, gets through to the second stage of qualifying. It's probably about as good as you can get for Daniel Ricciardo in what is a very poor AlphaTauri car.
I don't think we need to say much more about Daniel Ricciardo. Like the man just appears out of nowhere, just like, yeah, you know what? Give me that cigar, give me that pint. I'll take it and I'll carry your team through to Q2. And he did that exactly, beating his teammate. And I think it kind of shows. Is it Yuki Tsunoda outperforming the car or what? Because in the last couple of races, his form's just absolutely dropped. So I don't know whether he just had a very good start of the season and then just kind of just thought of it as, oh, Nick De Vries ain't performing. You know what? Let's not perform either. And then when Daniel Ricciardo comes into the building, he's just starstruck. He's just like, Daniel Ricciardo next to me. Wow. And yeah, he couldn't get through to Q2, whereas Daniel Ricciardo did. P13 for the Honey Badger. Can't go wrong. The only good thing about it, the only thing that could have topped it is a Q3 appearance, which would have put a cherry on top of the cake. But P13 is, I think, as best as you'll get in that AlphaTauri car.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about that. Yuki Tsunoda at the start of the season, was he actually, performing about average, or was he putting it where it didn't deserve to be? Because when you've got someone not performing next to you, it's quite hard to judge where that car is. So some pain for you as a Ferrari fan, seeing Carlos Sainz exit in Q2. It was first time this season Carlos Sainz hasn't made Q3. So now the only man who has made Q3 on every occasion is Fernando Alonso. What do you make of Carlos Sainz's struggles this weekend?
I think Ferrari as a team struggled massively, not just Carlos. I think Ferrari as a team struggled massively, and we saw that in the race, where Charles Leclerc still got preferential treatment, which is very, very interesting, to say the least. But I don't know how much was in it. I think there was like 2 or 3 thousandths in it between Carlos Sainz and P10. In Q2, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, it's annoying, it's unfortunate, but yeah, what can you do? When you're just generally struggling. I think Ferrari probably need more upgrades. Where you've seen Red Bull, you've seen Mercedes, you've seen McLaren put tons and tons of upgrades. I think we've only put 1 or 2 on, and we're lagging behind. So I think we need to kind of ahead of the summer break, pick up the pace a little bit, get the upgrades on, ready for the first race after the summer break, and just kind of reset, refocus, and hopefully just have a cleaner and a more improved second half of the season.
Another team who are in desperate need of upgrades, Alpine. Both drivers exiting in Q2. Esteban Ocon was in very good form in qualifying. Before the last couple of races, where Alpine seem to become the 6th quickest team now. What do you make of Alpine? They're really lagging behind, because considering, we were saying at the start of the season, they've got a very solid car. It's nothing special, but it's clear of the cars behind. Well, you see McLaren catch up and overtake them, and now are in the distance. This was a team that they beat to 4th in the constructors last year. What do you make of Alpine? Because they seem to have really stagnated in recent weeks.
Wow, we've seen eliminations in Q2 being a common theme, especially after Esteban Ocon's podium in Monaco. They've just gone backwards. McLaren have obviously overtaken. Aston Martin, I'll probably say clear as well. So a Ferrari, so a Mercedes, of course, Red Bull are up there. So yeah, they are probably the 6th quickest car on the grid currently, where they could have been. Well, when we saw Monaco, we were thinking, right, they could potentially nab a few podiums this season, but it doesn't look like that anymore. I think the top 5 teams are kind of nailed on for points finishes now. And Alpine really need to get a move on, especially similar to Ferrari with upgrades. Obviously, we'll talk more about their fortunes in the race. But another DNF for the two of them. So I mean, make of that what you will. Is it showing that they're going downhill, or just something is lacking with that car? Something that needs to be done for them to be back in contention. But for the time being, they look like they are in struggle town.
Yeah, not looking good for Alpina as it stands. Moving on to Q3 though. So the top 10 in reverse order. So Nico Hulkenberg, another Q3 appearance. Fantastic job from the German. Sergio Perez, 9th. Got through to Q3 at least, but continues to struggle. Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin in 8th. Valtteri Bottas, 7th in the Alfa Romeo. Leclerc in 6th and Guan Yu Zhou in 5th. But let's just touch on the Alfa Romeos a second. I know we'll get into it in a minute that they didn't have the race that they would have wanted, but to qualify 5th and 7th is no mean feat, and it was a fantastic job from the team.
Yeah, I obviously heard on the broadcast when I think it was Ted Kravitz talking to Martin Brundle and Crofty, that both the Alfa Romeo drivers took on new power units. So I don't know whether it was power unit related that propelled them into Q3 and got that 5th and 7th on the grid. And obviously over one lap they were brilliant. Guan Yu Zhou, fantastic job, obviously in Q1, in Q2, and in Q3. Same with Valtteri Bottas. I think he kind of lacked that. I think that power, that a bit of oomph to get him through to Q3. And I think with that new power unit that the two got, kind of propelled them into Q3, and maybe if they, well, I can't really say if they get power units every race because they can't do that. But if the opportunity was there and they had the chance to, I think they'd snatch your hand and take a power unit every single race, because I think they'd be qualifying inside the top 10 every single time. But yeah, fantastic job from the two of them. It's kind of surprising that obviously Zhou is still the leading light for Alfa Romeo ahead of Bottas, but nevertheless, good job from the two Alfa Romeos. Fantastic job. Can't fault them, really.
Yeah, Oscar Piastri made it a second consecutive second row start, qualifying in 4th. Lando Norris, in the last 5 races, this is the 4th time he's qualified inside the top 4, which is crazy to think about. In second place was Max Verstappen, the runaway leader, but on pole position, pole number 104 by 3/1000ths of a second, Lewis Hamilton. I'll let you take the lead on this one because I don't want to seem overly biased.
You know what? I was actually happy when Lewis Hamilton got pole. I know you'd probably be surprised from me being a Ferrari fan, but I actually cheered when Lewis Hamilton got on pole. I was actually happy that somebody else bar Max Verstappen was in pole position. The only thing I'm wondering, no purple sectors and still on pole. Class, absolute class act. I mean, yeah, it was brilliant to see Lewis Hamilton back on pole after over a year, I think. Is it over a year? Must have been.
Since
last one.
Saudi 2021, since Jeddah.
Yeah, I was about to say, well over a year. But yeah, brilliant, fantastic. Can't fault the man. Another pole position, but unfortunately he couldn't convert it into a race victory, could he? So, I mean, it was always going to be Max Verstappen's. But the memes that poured out after Hamilton got pole, oh, here we go, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton into turn 1 collision. It was always going to happen, but I'm happy for the man. I'm happy that he beat out Max Verstappen, and Max looked very sour in the post qualifying interviews, may I add. Very sour that he didn't get pole position. But yeah, I'm happy for Lewis Hamilton and that he managed to qualify on pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think that's a record number of pole positions at single circuit, which was breaking his previous record. Yeah, it was phenomenal, wasn't it? To put it on pole at a track he loves so much, and just for a second, you dreamt that maybe this was going to be the weekend of dreams. But we'll move on to that now for our 1 to 10 ratings. So kicking things off, Max Verstappen, 10 out of 10. Move on.
Really?
Yeah, 40-second. When won by 40 seconds. I will just say, he is a terrible wheel-to-wheel driver. We see that at the start. He doesn't turn in. He is one of the dirtiest drivers on the grid. He's got by far and away the quickest car, and then he just didn't turn into turn one. It compromised Hamilton Norris's first corner. Piastri almost took the lead because of it. It is just so dirty and reckless that, eventually he's going to come across someone who's going to say, no, I'm not yielding, and they're going to have a collision, and they're both going to be out the race. Lewis Hamilton isn't that type of driver, but he's going to come across a driver who's not going to give in, or maybe Hamilton will have enough one day and he won't. But yeah, it is what he does. He's got some sort of hatred to Lewis Hamilton, and it really shows, doesn't it?
He might just smash into somebody just to make him feel better. But you've given him a 10. I've dropped him down to a 9.5. I know he finished well ahead of the pack, but a 10 out of 10 weekend would have seen him get pole position. That would have topped it for me. If he got pole position and finished 40 seconds clear of the pack, that's a 10 out of 10 for me. But I think just because he qualified second, and I don't think I want to give out any more Max Verstappen 10 out of 10s, I'm giving him a 9.5.
Fair enough. I will happily drop it down to 9.5 because I'm still a little bit salty. After turn one. Lando Norris qualified in third, finished in second. I've given him a 10 out of 10. Third straight 10 out of 10 for me. I don't think you can give him anything else. I think this is one we can agree on. Phenomenal effort.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. Don't need to say much more. You've literally put it there in a nutshell. 10 out of 10. The man doesn't deserve any more. If I could give him an 11 out of 10, I could. But yeah, I mean, the qualifying third, finishing second, it's just another 10 out of 10 performance.
Yeah, and moving on now to Sergio Perez. He qualified down in ninth and started third. We see, again, another poor qualifying. And I don't want to hear any excuses that, at least he qualified into Q3 because he's in the quickest car on the grid. He did show, how quick that Red Bull was and did make some good overtakes. So I will give him some credit there. I've given him an 8 out of 10, all things considered. Maybe that's a little bit kind considering he didn't finish second when he really should have. But, Sergio Perez is a very lucky man. He's very lucky that Red Bull is so far clear that he is able just to breeze by the other 9 teams, maybe apart from 1 or 2 drivers that's pushing it a little bit too far, and that his poor qualifying results aren't made more emphasized because of the cars are close. So it's an 8 out of 10 for me, but it's a very lucky 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I've agreed with you. 8 out of 10. I mean, he made up the 6 places from his qualifying position, but still, the man should be qualifying on the second row, bomb minimum on the second row. And how he's not doing that, it's just beyond me. It really does bamboozle me. Obviously finishing third, happy days, but you should be finishing on the podium every single weekend you're racing, mate. Like, you're in the quickest car. There's no excuses here. And for Lando Norris to beat him, where Perez should have beaten Lando Norris when he was gaining on him, it's just crazy. So, like you said, a very, very lucky 8 out of 10. But seriously, I think Sergio's qualifying after his last couple of races picked up a little bit in Hungary, but it's still nowhere near good enough.
Yeah, you say he should be qualifying on the second row minimum. He's only qualified on the front row 3 times this season. 2 of them were pole positions, and 2 of them were when Max Verstappen, had issues in qualifying. The 2 issues he's had in qualifying. It's just not good enough, and I think his seat will be under threat if Daniel Ricciardo continues his good form. I will say that. Moving on to Lewis Hamilton now. Qualified on pole, didn't finish on the podium, finished in 4th. They had some real struggles with race pace this weekend. Mercedes seemed like the brakes and the tyres were severely overheating. He did recover well, on that last stint on, I think he was on the mediums on that last stint, and almost got a podium late on when Perez's pace seemed to drop off a cliff. So I've given him an 8 out of 10, all things considered.
Yeah, similar for me. 8 out of 10. I would have given him a 9 if it was a podium finish, but I think I kind of held that back because he didn't finish on the podium. Like all things considered, I think when the fuel comes down, the Mercedes kind of comes to life. And he showed that in his final stint where he nearly caught Sergio Perez. But yeah, an 8 out of 10 for me. Fantastic to qualify on pole, but not to convert it to a podium is a bit disappointing. But all things considered, I think it was a decent weekend for Lewis.
Yeah, it's valuable points in the battle for in the drivers' championship, isn't it? He closes that gap to Fernando Alonso. Moving on to Oscar Piastri, qualified in fourth and finished fifth. I've given him a 9 out of 10. I think, if you look at it at the start of the season, I know people have been saying, yeah, well, his pace dropped off. He should really have been fighting for a podium. And he finished so far behind Hamilton and Perez. But if you actually look at it from the start of the season, he's finished fifth. This is unbelievable. He almost took the lead at the start. And I think, to be quite honest, he is a future world champion and potentially a future multiple world champion. I think he's that good. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for me. I think he's continued to impress.
I'm gonna repeat it once again. Let's not forget this kid is a rookie. I mean, he's shown maturity throughout the last couple of races and to finish fifth, qualifying fourth. Obviously only qualifying behind your teammate on the second row, and then obviously if dropping back a little bit when Perez and Hamilton came through. It's still fantastic. Another top 5 finish. What more could you ask for from him apart from maybe a podium? But yeah, he was brilliant in Budapest. He was fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on now to George Russell. He qualified down in 18th and finished 6th. I've given him a 9 out of 10 as well. The Hungaroring is one of the most difficult tracks to overtake at, and he's made up 12 positions. He had such superior pace to the Aston Martins and the Ferraris, who those three teams have been locked in a battle for the majority of the season. But now Mercedes seem to have broken clear of those two teams, I would like to say. And yeah, a great performance. And you just wonder what would have been possible if he had qualified in the top 10. You wonder maybe, is there a chance he could be beating Hamilton? Maybe is there a chance he could be fighting for a podium? Who knows? But it's a what if for George Russell. But I've given him a 9 out of 10 for fantastic race performance.
Once again, we've agreed on another rating. I've also given George a 9 out of 10, making up 12 places. I mean, that's no mean feat at the Hungaroring, let's be honest. But yeah, another fantastic recovery from George, and yeah, it's another weekend of what ifs for George Russell. If he qualified inside the top 10, could he have maybe challenged Norris and Perez for P2, P3? Could have been, but I guess we'll never know.
Moving on now to, I think, what will be a painful topic for yourself. Charles Leclerc, he qualified 6th and finished 7th. Another poor showing from the Ferraris. An unforced error cost him 6th place. I know George Russell, especially on that last lap, was right on the back of him. However, the 5-second penalty was unforced. He didn't gain any time by going a couple of kilometers an hour over the speed limit. And the entire race, I don't think he was as quick as Carlos Sainz. I think Sainz was the quicker of the two Ferraris this weekend, and I think team orders are responsible for him finishing ahead of Sainz. So I've given him a 5 out of 10.
I've given him a 6. I mean, it's another weekend of, it's similar to George. What if this? What if that? What if everything? And yeah, like you said, I think team orders are playing in his favour massively. I think he's the star boy at Ferrari. Let's not sugarcoat it. I think he's been thrusted in the limelight, and I think Sainz is getting just the unnecessary treatment he should be getting from the team. But yeah, I've given him a 6 out of 10. I think it's a mediocre weekend. Let's just move on. It's painful.
Yeah, moving on now to his teammate Carlos Sainz. He qualified down 11th and finished 8th. And this is such a frustrating one for me because I like Carlos Sainz. I think he's such an underrated driver. But Ferrari continued to mistreat him. He had a fantastic start. He got up to, I think it was 6th on that first lap. Was on the softs. Leclerc's on the mediums in front of him, but he wasn't allowed through. Ferrari didn't let him go to see what he could do on those softs. Could he challenge Hamilton? Could he challenge the McLarens, make up some positions? He wasn't allowed to show his pace. And then again, on that final stint, I think the only reason Leclerc, that gap hovered between 5.2 and 5.5 seconds for that entire stint until I think it was Russell passed Sainz and then he dropped off completely. And I don't think that was a coincidence. I think that was planned from Ferrari. He was told to stick at that pace. So I've given him a 6 out of 10. I gave him slightly higher than Leclerc because I thought he was the better of the two Ferraris. And it was only Ferrari favouring their star boy, the man who they want to win them the World Championship, want them to regain the championship with, and really asserting a hierarchy at Ferrari, even when it's not earned.
Yeah, so like you've just said, you've gone for Carlos Sainz, the higher rated of the two drivers, and so have I. I've given him a 7. I think obviously the qualifying performance wasn't brilliant, getting knocked out in Q2. But to obviously make up the positions at the start, and then finish in P8 behind Leclerc, who had that 5-second time penalty and was favoured, was always going to happen. So I've also gone with Sainz as the higher of the two Ferrari drivers. I think if he was allowed to push, I think he could have challenged the Mercedes and the McLarens. But yeah, it's the third driver in this rankings where it's another weekend of what ifs. And unfortunately, those what ifs will never be answered because Ferrari are very, very stubborn.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on now to Fernando Alonso. Now, what's gone wrong at Aston Martin this season? He qualified down in 8th and finished in 9th. Aston Martin's pace has really, really fallen off a cliff, hasn't it? I think they're probably now the 5th quickest car. When at the start of the season they were the 2nd quickest. But Alonso maximised the result. There was no way he was keeping up and overtaking those Ferraris. And he had some great defensive driving, a nice little battle with Perez, and you thought, here we go again. We know how much Fernando Alonso loves a defensive drive at Hungary. So I gave him a 7 out of 10. I think he'd done as much as he could, but you can't give him any higher than a 7, I don't think.
I've given him a 6.5 out of 10. Like you said, the man I think was pretty anonymous throughout the race. Just kind of Aston Martin's pace just has gone absolutely down a cliff. And yeah, I really don't know what is happening in that team. It was podium after podium, and now it's lucky to even finish in the points. So yeah, another lucky 6.5 for me. And Aston Martin, like Ferrari and Alpine, I think they need to buckle up their ideas during the summer break and see what's going wrong to kind of fix the problem.
Yeah, we thought that those Aston Martin upgrades in Canada was really a stepping stone, and they could assert dominance as that second best team, but not to be. On to Lance Stroll, qualified in 14th and finished 10th. If there wasn't such a big gap between the 5 quickest teams and the 6th quickest team, then he wouldn't have been getting a point. He managed to get a point, and I think it was by about 20 seconds in the end. But I think that's more down to the gap in competition than it is down to Lance Stroll's performance. I've given him a 6 out of 10 because it is still points. He's only finished 1 place lower than his teammate, who we've praised a lot this season. So I think, Lance Stroll will probably be happy with taking that point.
Yeah, I've gone the same as you, 6 out of 10. Yeah, the less said about Lance Stroll, the better, I think. So yeah, a point is a point, but I mean, what can you say about this driver? He's just there, isn't he? He's just there. Yeah, 6 out of 10. Mediocre race. Let's move on.
Yeah, I have got a bit of a stat, and you know, people who listen know to this regularly know I love a good stat. So in the last two races, Ferrari have got 13 points. Aston Martin have got 9 points. McLaren have got 58 points. Is a push for third in the constructors on for McLaren? They are only 80 points behind Ferrari and 97 points behind Aston Martin. I think, given how Mercedes is still performing compared to McLaren, I don't think that's on to push for second. But I think realistically, McLaren could finish third in the constructors. What do you think of that?
No comment.
I'm sure the Ferrari fan would be a bit. I think you're a little bit nervous, though, aren't you, going into the second half of the season with McLaren's pace?
I mean, Ferrari are surely down to get some more upgrades. I mean, McLaren have upgraded like twice or three times within the last couple of races. So you've seen the skyrocket of their power and their prowess during the races and during qualifying. So I think we're due some upgrades. I'm saying we, as in Ferrari, are due some upgrades. Because if McLaren beat us, I'm sorry, but I don't know what I'm gonna do. I honestly don't know what I'm gonna do in my life. I might just go into hiding again.
I'll tell you something a little bit scary. McLaren have only bought two upgrade packages this season. They had that package, I think it was in Baku, which was a redesign of the concept, so similar to what Mercedes brought in Monaco, where they completely changed their philosophy. And then obviously they split their upgrades. So they gave Norris the upgrades in Austria and Piastri the upgrades in Silverstone. So two upgrade packages has brought them forward to what is the second quickest car by some distance. Narrowly missing out on the points, Alex Albon qualified 16th and finished 11th. And yet again, he's maximised his result, hasn't he? P11 is a very good result at a track where Williams is going to be pretty useless without many long straights, a lot of corners. So I've given Alex Albon an 8 out of 10.
Likewise, once again, the Williams man does it again. For him not to get a point and for Lance to get a point is criminal. I don't want Lance in the points. It's just, like I say, the man's just there. He's just there. He's just holding on to Papa Fernando's tail and just he's got a point. But Albon, once again, another brilliant performance to finish P11 after qualifying P16. And yeah, an 8 out of 10 is warranted. I think he's just doing what he does best, just maximising the hell out of that car and dragging himself near enough close to the point. So once again, brilliant.
Moving on now to Valtteri Bottas. He had a great qualifying, didn't he? Qualified up in 7th. Wasn't to be in the race. Finished down 12th. And I think Valtteri had a very terrible first lap. Not as bad as his teammate, but I think he showed a lack of aggression where a number of cars just sailed up the inside, were more aggressive than him, and he didn't really put up a fight. I think it's something that really done him well at Mercedes, but when you're fighting in the midfield, you kind of need to have a bit more fight in you. I think I've given him a 5 out of 10. 12th place still isn't a bad result. If you think about where Alfa Romeo being this season, a 12, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. Yeah, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. Where Alfa Romeo being this season, 12th is a decent result, but he qualified 7th. He's lost 5 places, so I can't really give him too much higher.
I was about to say, I was very shocked that you gave him a 5 out of 10 because you're thinking realistically. Obviously, Lance Stroll has made up places, but with him being in an Aston Martin, he should be qualifying closer to Q3. And him getting only a point is kind of criminal. But then again, it's Aston Martin and we kind of dropped down a little bit. And the Alfa Romeo to qualify inside Q3. You rarely see that. It's a mean feat for Valtteri Bottas, and obviously to drop down a couple of places and to finish outside the points, it's annoying. But then again, I think we've kind of seen a little bit of progress from him and from Alfa Romeo. So I'll settle with a 7 out of 10. I think it's another step up in the right direction. Yeah, the new power unit may have helped, and like I said at the start of the episode, if they got a power unit every single race, it could have been a lot better this season. But unfortunately, they can't do that. But I think it's a step in the right direction, so I'll settle with a 7.
Moving on now to Daniel Ricciardo.
Daniel Avocado.
Let me say that properly. Yeah, he qualified in 13th and finished in 13th. Now I've given him an 8 out of 10. Fantastic recovery drive, great qualifying. Done 40 laps on the mediums. And I think the next longest stint was about 25. So great drive. Yeah, good to have him back.
Yeah, I was about to say he dropped to plumb last at one point, I think, didn't he? So to recover to where he started, a fantastic job. Like you said, brilliant to have him back. The Honey Badger once again is back. He's in business once again. And I can't wait to see him in Belgium. What he could do in that AlphaTauri car around Spa-Francorchamps. Yeah, again, you're probably thinking AlphaTauri, an absolute crap box. Is he going to qualify on the back row of the grid? I don't know. It could happen. But with Daniel Ricciardo, I have a lot of faith in him, so I wouldn't expect that from him. But at the Hungarian Ring, it was a good weekend for him and good to have him back.
So what's your grade?
8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. That actually takes Daniel Ricciardo into third place on our 1 to 10 driver rankings.
He's only had one race, okay.
I know. But so after Belgium, when we go through this at the halfway point, if Daniel Ricciardo is like fourth, then everyone knows why. It's because it's an average and it's over 2 races. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, the only driver to make the one-stop strategy work, by the way, in the heats that we saw, fantastic. Nico Hülkenberg now, he qualified in 10th, another Q3 appearance. Didn't materialise in the race. He finished 14th, but I think this is as much as he can do with it. I've given him a 7 out of 10. It's good race pace. He's thrashing his teammate, and he can't be doing any more than he's doing, I don't think.
Yeah, the bright blonde hair, Nico Hülkenberg. He wanted to do it for a bit of PR because of a new Barbie film. If you saw his comments regarding his dyed hair, but yeah, I think he was sharp during qualifying as he usually is, and during the race, obviously that Haas, we know that it heavily lacks on its race pace, but it's as much as he could have done. P14 behind the Honey Badger, so I think it's on par to a similar performance to Valtteri Bottas. So yeah, I've gone with a 7 out of 10 as well.
And on to Yuki Tsunoda now. He qualified down in 17th, finished 15th. 6 out of 10 for me. Car's not great, but he's been beaten by his teammate who was plumb last after lap 1. Got crashed into, made a one-stop strategy work and finished 3 places off the points. So yeah, it wasn't a bad performance because if we've said that before how bad that car is, but yeah, it's nothing to write home about. 15th place, only 17 cars actually finished the race.
Very mediocre from me. I've gone with a 5 out of 10. I think it's not what we're used to from Yuki. I think with Daniel Ricciardo coming into that team, you're seeing that clearly Yuki needs to step up a little bit because I think with Nick in that team, I think he kind of got complacent during the last couple of races, and Daniel Ricciardo's already shown that AlphaTauri is capable of good things. So a 5 out of 10, I think it was quite anonymous during that race, and I think it was just very average.
And on now to Guan Yu Zhou, a terrible first lap. I know, I'm pretty sure that it wasn't his fault. They had poor getaway, but He's responsible for crashing out 2 cars and almost ruining another driver's race. So I've given him a 3 out of 10, and that 3 is purely for his qualifying lap. To put it in P5. If he had like an average qualifying, it would have been a 0. Put it that way. So yeah, it's a 3 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I've given him a 4 out of 10. Purely on the basis of his qualifying again. Q1, Q2, Q3, fantastic. Race day, awful. And obviously he was very lucky to finish that race. And he obviously made contact on numerous occasions. So a 4 out of 10. That's purely basis of qualifying, nothing else, just qualifying. 4 out of 10 for Zhou Guanyu.
And on now to the last of the finishers, Kevin Magnussen. He qualified down in 19th and finished 17th. Yet again, he's outclassed by Nico Hulkenberg. And to be honest, his seat should be under threat. He should be a little bit worried about securing the seat for next season. And I think, it just proves that maybe at the start of last season, they made the wrong call bringing in Kevin Magnussen, and they should have brought in Nico Hulkenberg. Because it would have been exciting to see what he could have done in that Haas based on his performances this season, when he's so much quicker than Kevin Magnussen. So he's finishing 5th in the first race, Kevin Magnussen. Could Nico Hulkenberg have got a podium, It would have been interesting to see, but 4 out of 10 for me for Magnussen, not good enough. He needs to have the summer break, reset, and get at it the last 10 races.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you've just said. I've gone with a 3 out of 10. I think qualifying just ahead of Logan Sargent and then finishing plumb last. It's just a struggle. But what could have the Haas team been with a Mick Schumacher and a Nico Hulkenberg duo? It's another what if that we ask ourselves. But yeah, 3 out of 10. I think the only highlight of Kevin Magnussen's time during his second stint at Haas is his pole position at Sao Paulo, and that was an extraordinary feat. But apart from that, there's just been very, very little / few highlights for him. So 3 out of 10 for me for that for this weekend at the Hungarian.
There's an argument. Apart from Nick De Vries, Kevin Magnussen's been the worst driver this season. We'll have to wait and see what our driver ratings say after Belgium. Moving on to the retirees, Logan Sargent qualified in last and did not finish. Seems to be 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards for Logan Sargent. We praised him after the last 2 races, particularly Silverstone, for almost getting into the points. But then it was a return to form for him in a track where Williams were destined to struggle. And I think, that Williams coming out and saying that, the reason they retired the car was because of damage, I think it's just to save face a little bit from the embarrassment from Sargent spinning completely unopposed. 4 out of 10 for me. I think I might be being a little bit nice though.
Yeah, I've gone with the same rating as Kevin Magnussen, 3 out of 10. It's like you said, 1 step forward, 2 step back, and he is in a familiar place once again. So yeah, 3 out of 10. He's just lacking that consistency that we praised him for, that we wanted. 14, 15 place finishes, Logan, not spinning and retiring the car. That's not what we wanted. We wanted a bit more consistency, but unfortunately, with the penultimate race ahead of the summer break, unfortunately, he couldn't deliver that. He couldn't deliver that this time around.
Yeah, I think he's going to need a good race in Spa, which is, it could happen. We know how good the Williams is in a straight line, so we'll have to wait and see. Now, on to the Alpines, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. I've grouped these two together. I've given them straight down the middle, a 5 out of 10. Average qualifyings, they got into Q2. Neither one of them got into Q3, but you can't really judge them based on their running in the race, because by the first corner they were both out. So 5 out of 10. Nothing more to say.
1 out of 10 for me, for both of them. No, I'm
Hey,
joking. I knew I
I'm
knew
gonna
you'd pull that
say,
face. No, obviously the collisions at the start wasn't their fault. They were completely unopposed to that one. So yeah, qualifying very mediocre. I've gone with 4 out of 10. They're just lacking in that consistency. Yeah, they're getting through to Q2, but we know the Alpines to be getting through to Q3 and challenging for fifth and sixth in the order at some points this season. And they've clearly just struggled and dropped off the pace a little bit. So I've given them not a 1 out of 10 for both of them, but a 4 out of 10 for both of them.
and now reviewing our predictions for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Do you want to give me your two-star predictions first of all?
Well, the first thing is, I'm looking at the sheet of paper that I've got in front of me in my notepad, and to begin with, I wrote two or more DNFs, but scribbled it out and gone with Ricardo top 10. So that one didn't come through. And then Perez completely did me over. As I had Perez not qualifying for Q3, which he did for the first time in forever. So yeah, that's another nil point for me.
By contrast, I had a fantastic weekend. I said Ricardo to beat Sonoda, and he beat it in both sessions, in qualifying and the race. And Williams double Q1 exit, which I'm very happy about. So yeah, I'm very happy to take a 2 out of 2 on that one. What about on to your top five for qualifying?
Yeah, so after the previous race, I was very confident for Ferrari. And I obviously went with Verstappen on pole position, which didn't happen as it was Mr. Lewis Hamilton. Leclerc to finish second, which he didn't. He was nowhere near. Hamilton to finish third, and we know it was Mr. Lando Norris. Russell to finish fourth in qualifying, and it was Mr. Oscar Piastri. And Sainz to finish fifth, and we know it wasn't Carlos Sainz. So nil point once again.
I had slightly better fortunes. So I said Verstappen on pole, and obviously he wasn't. I said Carlos Sainz second, and he was nowhere near. I did correctly get Lando Norris in third, and then I said the Mercedes in fourth and fifth with Hamilton and Russell, and they were nowhere to be seen in that top five. Moving on to the race, got a point for Max Verstappen winning, and then I said Hamilton to finish second. Thought he runs so well at the Hungaroring, so I hedged my bets, but it didn't come off. Sainz in third. I thought this would be the weekend he finally got that podium, but no. And then I had Russell fourth and Norris fifth. So I wasn't far off, but no, 2 out of 10 for me.
So obviously for the race, everybody goes for Max Verstappen winning, and I did get that. I had Hamilton in second, Leclerc third, Sainz fourth, and Norris in fifth. So another abysmal weekend for me.
And now on to our Belgian Grand Prix predictions. Do you want to kick things off with your two-star predictions?
So for my two-star predictions, I know Belgium is quite high speed, with most of the cars going flat out at some corners, and especially with the long Camel Straight as well. So I've gone with an Albon Q3 appearance, and I've gone with another Lando Norris podium. I think Lando Norris is going to continue that fortune streak that has seen him rise up the order and bag himself 2 podiums in the last 2 races. So yeah, I'm going to go with those 2 for my star prediction. So Albon getting into Q3 and a Lando Norris podium.
I've gone very similar actually. I've gone Alex Albon to get points, and I've gone for Lando Norris to get pole. I think that McLaren is going to be an absolute rocket ship around the high speed corners at Spa. And I think they can do it. You know, we've seen that the Red Bull is beatable in qualifying, and now I think for the second consecutive race we're going to have a Brit on pole. So moving on now to our sprint qualifying and sprint race top fives. So for sprints in qualifying, I've gone for Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, Perez, Hamilton, and for the sprint race, I've gone Norris to get the win. Verstappen, Piastri, Perez, Hamilton.
Well. Okay. So for the sprint shootout, I've gone Verstappen to get sprint pole with Hamilton in second, Perez in third, Norris in fourth, and Leclerc in fifth. And for the sprint, I've gone with Verstappen to convert that pole, to convert that sprint shootout pole into victory, with Perez in second, Norris in third, Leclerc gaining a position in Hamilton and down the order to finish fifth.
And now on to the main event, the qualifying and the race. So for qualifying, as I said, I've gone for Lando Norris on pole. I've gone Max Verstappen second, Oscar Piastri third, and then the Mercedes duo of Hamilton and Russell.
And I've gone with Verstappen to get pole once again, Lando Norris in second, Leclerc in third, Hamilton in fourth, and Perez in fifth.
And onto the race, I went for Verstappen to make it 10 wins this season, which is a scary thought already, considering we're not even at the summer break. I've gone Lando Norris to make it a third straight second place finish, Hamilton to get back onto the podium, Piastri to once again just miss out, and then Russell to round off the top five.
And I've gone with Verstappen as well to get the victory, a clean sweep for Verstappen this weekend, I feel. Norris to get another second place, and potentially smash Max Verstappen's trophy once again. If you know the context, you know. Hamilton to get on the podium and finish P3, with the Ferrari duo of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz finishing P4 and P5. I think there might be some issues for Perez. Don't quote me on it, but I think there might be trouble time for Perez, and I think this could be the breaking point. This could be it.
When out there issues for Perez, is what I have to say. So that is everything we've covered for the Hungarian Grand Prix race review, and then looking ahead to Spa this weekend. It is a sprint weekend, so we'll have a lot of big long podcast next week to see us through the summer break. Thank you, Adrian, for joining me today, and we will see you in the next podcast. Goodbye.